Welcome back to Fast Freddy RC, and as you can see, the Monster Beetle is now finished. I just love the way this turned out. I mean, just the coloring, the gold wheels, everything about it, and I'm really happy that I ended up painting the body because there's a lot of, even though it's modeled in red, there's a lot of blemishes, and you can sort of see in the molding process there's colors differences. So by painting it, the color they're actually asking you to paint it, it really looks sharp. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. Now, I decided I would do this video slightly separately because throughout the build process, there was a number of places where I think it's worth giving you a few little tips along the way, which I would have found helpful. Now, I decided that when I was building this, I would do it exactly how the manual states. Even if I started to see something that, maybe could have been done differently. So let me take you through a few of these things, and I kind of made a list here of different things. One, the radio gear. Okay, so the setup in steps 4 says put the the electronic speed controller right here, which is where I put it. But you could actually put it up top. So if I'm just going to take this part off so we can actually take a look. So obviously the original instructions are showing you putting it down here, but in the next step they show that it could have been sitting up here with the receiver. And being that this is a monster truck, I think it would have been smarter if I had kind of thought this out a bit better and put the speed controller up here. Because, down here they've got the protective brace. But if you're going to go through any deep water or, anywhere where there's some really wet mud, whatever it might be, I still think that's a bit shaky being down here. Although the steering servo, there is no other placement for it, and that's an electronic, so I guess they've thought it through. I don't know. I would have preferred to put it up here. Now you might go, well, how come you didn't? Well, part of it was when I built the Frog, there is no real other choice. You have to put it there because if you want the driver figure, it needs to sit up here, which means there is no other placement for it. So when I was building this, I was sort of thinking of the Frog build and ended up putting it down here. It is what it is. But I would say with this one, Monster Beetle, Mud Blaster, if you have it, it's best to put the speed controller up here instead. Front suspension. It's interesting. I've always thought this, even with the Blackfoot here, is that there's not a lot of suspension travel. This is just a point. It's not really a tip. It's just that I always find that the suspension travel for the front is not really much at all. This is smoother than the Blackfoot because of the oil-filled shocks, but it still isn't giving you that much suspension travel. Now on the rear, I mean, that's a different story. There's an incredible amount of suspension travel for the back end. It's just there's not much on the front. But, for the most part, these are bashers. They're not meant for competition races. I still would do it if there was a stock race or something, but it doesn't matter. It's just that it's just an interesting point. There isn't a lot of suspension travel in the front. Now, battery cover. So, this cover gets installed when you're putting the two side pieces together on the ORV chassis. And once it's done, this piece here just flops around, and it's kind of in the way, to be honest, when you're building it. Now, once you put the gearbox on, you can actually put that pin through and lock it in place, right? But what I found interesting is that in the instruction manual, they do not mention putting this pin in until step 40, I think it is. No, step 34. Well, throughout the build process, I find this battery cover gets in the way all the time. So if I was doing the instructions, I would actually put that pin in at step 30, from step 34 and put it in at step 15. So as soon as you've put the gear cover or the gearbox on the chassis, you've actually connected it right away. Then it's out of the way, because otherwise it's flopping all over the place and often gets in the way. So if you're building one of these, I would put this pin in as soon as that gearbox is attached to the chassis. Just a point of interest. The other thing is, in the Monster Beetle 2015 box, there comes a correction notice. Now, I talked a bit about this in the build series, but what I was finding was that the pinion gear, as I do it through 27 in the actual manual, it was actually okay. Because once I put it onto the gearbox and could see the other side to see how it was fitting on the pinion, it seemed to be okay. So I'm not entirely sure why they're asking for it to be adjusted as it is. I mean, putting the little screw in there anyway, the grub screw to hold it on, can often be a little bit finicky, and you kind of, it can get missed, a couple of millimeters here and there. I just found that in the build process, without using the correction notice, it was actually being attached to this quite well. And the placement of it as it sits on the gear inside the box was fine. So I don't know, I was okay with the placement. The other part was, which, in step 32, there is a correction notice for the tires, because they actually tell you it's the other direction in the actual manual in terms of how the rotation is, in terms of the tires and how you put the wheels on. So that one is worth looking at, this little correction notice, because there is a difference. The other thing was the aerial. You do have two choices in terms of placement. One, you can put it on similar to how it goes on the Frog, where you attach it here. But I found with the Monster Beetle body specifically, it looks way better if it's just off on its own. So if I just pop this back on again, you can see where the aerial's coming out of the back end. I think that looks way better than if it was attached to the side, similar to the, well, the Blackfoot's different, but the Frog gets off to the side. So I think that looks great just from the rear. So that was the choice that I made. Obviously you can make a different choice, but I thought that looked great the way it was. The last little tip, which I do mention in the build series too, were these mirrors. Now, they tell you in the instruction manual, if you're planning on running this, don't put them on, because they're going to break off when you roll over. I just find if they're supposed to be on, let's put them on. And I think it looks really cool with the mirrors on the car. When you're taking these mirrors off of the tree, the parts tree, you're going to find that you're going to go right back down to the red plastic that's underneath this chrome. And what I find that's most useful are these chrome paint markers, because there's 3 different sizes in this box. They're from Fly-C, and there's a 3mm one, a 1mm one, and a 0.7mm one. And I just find they are really, really useful. So that's a pretty good choice if you've got any chrome work that needs done and it's kind of got scraped or whatever it is, use these. They're going to look sharp, because I don't notice any difference on the mirrors once that paint dried. It looks really, really good. And other than that, I found the build went rather smoothly. I spent some time putting together Albert Attaboy. I don't know if you can see him in there, probably a little hard. Spent some time kind of really putting in the details, the straps, the belt. I even put some pupils in his eyes with some, just a really fine paintbrush. So as a whole, I'm very happy with this car. If there's anything that you saw in the build video series, this technically is step 10 video 10 in the series for this build. So there's 9 other videos. If there's anything that's come out of there that you have other questions about, feel free to reach out, let me know. I'm happy to help. Otherwise, we're gonna start another build, and I think the last time when I was looking at this, we were going to start with the M05 chassis, which I'm going to do. So it's the Yaris, which is this other one behind me here. So I'm going to start a whole new build series, and then there's a few others that are on the way, and I might just see what you guys would like to see built next. So first we're going to do this M05, and we'll go from there. So again, this has turned out awesome. Love putting this together. Please like, subscribe. Let me know that this video series has worked for you, and we'll see you in another video.